these civilians suffering under siege. Instead of joining us constructively to reach that goal, Russia again has backed the Assad regime in their ruthless war against the Syrian people.
You're saying that they have halted aid during the
They did
time.
not permit the facilitation.
How did they do that physically? I mean, did they have barricades? Did they stop?
In terms of, they did not
obstructed the roads
facilitate the access. They worked with their partners in the regime to block the aid.
Okay. There are also reports that.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll follow up on you.
On this one, I mean, what specifically did Russia do in this latest bombing campaign that you're saying is a violation of international law?
Well, we're taking a look at what Russia is hitting. It's hitting mobile clinics. It's hitting hospitals. Again, it's denying aid. We've said this repeatedly. Russia had an opportunity here to facilitate aid and food and medicine to these people under siege. It failed to do so.
But when you're saying it's a violation of international law, are you talking about something they have specifically done as part of this resumption of airstrikes, whether it's the hitting of hospitals, or are you saying this is just what they've been up to?
The set of actions that they have taken
over the last many weeks.
Yes. Sorry.
Surprised?
We've talked a lot about Russia's actions and their words. Russia, for 3 weeks, made a significant point of saying that it had halted bombardment of Aleppo and had, broadcast that through its various platforms and various outlets. The resumption of airstrikes today, I won't say is a surprise. It's certainly a disappointment.
But they did say that these pauses were temporary in nature, and they kept being extended.
With the idea that it would be for aid access,
right, and then
which did not happen.
Right, and then they did make the announcement that everyone should leave that part of the city. That doesn't make it any. That doesn't mitigate it.
Warning civilians that you're going to bomb them doesn't make bombing civilians.
I'm not suggesting that it does. I'm just asking you that you don't think that that's a mitigating factor.
Hold on one second, Leslie. I want to go to Saeed because we
very quickly. Now they're making separation between bombing Aleppo and bombing Idlib. You don't make that separation. You think that's part of the same campaign?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's part of the same campaign.
Yes.
The same Russian aerial bombardment campaign. And my last question is: it seems that areas under government control is also suffering from lack of aid and so on, according to the United Nations. Do you have any information on that?
I don't. On that would be best a question for the UN. Civilians need aid, period. Leslie, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Have you raised your thoughts with the Russians, if you are talking in...
So we continue to have these discussions in Geneva.
What was it raised with them then?
Yes.
It was?
Yes.
So, wait. Today?
We met in Geneva.
Today.
The issue of the possibility of strikes. I'm not sure on the timing because I believe the strikes happened while they were still meeting in Geneva. We've raised the issue of bombardment. Let me check the exact timing and see if it came up today. Okay.
Well, but wait, I mean, you can't.
So we were meeting in Geneva. We talked about.
There was a meeting underway when the resumption of the attacks happened.
I want to check the exact timing on that.
Okay.
Are we done on Syria?
Well, I just want to go back to not the point that I made yesterday, but my question from yesterday. If they were in fact in the middle of a meeting, how can you say that these meetings are accomplishing anything when in the middle of it, the bombardment resumes?
Yeah, we believe that Russia and the Syrian regime's actions are inexcusable. However, we still believe that the only way forward is a political resolution, and that resolution will happen through multilateral talks.
Right, but these multilateral talks are not aimed at a political resolution. I thought they were aimed at trying to get the ceasefire back.
It is a ceasefire, aid delivery, creating the space to have that political
But the
resolution.
meetings in Geneva are not aimed at, they are ultimately aimed at restarting the political talks, but in the immediate term, they're supposed to be for the ceasefire.
That's correct, but
Right?
we do view this as a sequence of steps.
I get that, but you're still saying that these meetings are worthwhile, and
We
I don't
do.
understand how you can say that if in the very middle of the meeting, the attacks begin again.
We continue to believe it's important to talk.
Okay.
And when will you be ready to withdraw from the table?
I'm not going to get ahead of that, Michelle. One more.
Well, I was trying to figure out, can we just clarify, at what level are these discussions
They're
again?
working
So if you say,
level. Yeah.
I mean, is Ratney there? Is the special envoy
At
there?
this stage, it's working level discussions. It's my understanding that the special envoy is not in Geneva right now.
What are the achievements of these meetings or of these groups?
You know, we talked about this at length yesterday.
But we didn't
Michelle.
get it yet. If there is no results yet and they are still meeting, what's the purpose of meeting without achieving
You
anything?
know, we actually spent about 20 minutes unpacking this yesterday. You know, we are not saying that these discussions in Geneva are coming to an immediate conclusion or an immediate win, but we continue to believe that this is the best path forward, is a discussion in a multilateral setting, and we'll stay at the table until we believe it's not the case.
The U.S. ambassador in Iraq visited Erbil over the weekend.
He did.
Could you give us a readout on his meetings, please?
It did. I believe you might have seen the embassy in Baghdad actually issued a statement on this today, but I'm happy to recap it. Ambassador Suleiman did visit the Iraq Kurdistan region yesterday. The ambassador was accompanied by the Deputy Special Presidential Envoy for the Global Coalition to Counter ISIL, Terry Wolf. The ambassador met separately with President Barzani and other IKR officials to discuss progress in the battle against Daesh, U.S. support for the Peshmerga, and the IDP situation in the area. The ambassador praised the sacrifices and the bravery of the Peshmerga and thanked the leaders for their support of the more than 1 million IDPs and refugees who have come to the IKR. Ambassador Suleiman also encouraged the Kurdish leaders to continue what we see as productive dialogue between Erbil and Baghdad to address outstanding issues.
And while he was there, he gave a press conference. He answered a reporter's question, saying he was confident that Peshmerga forces would return to their pre-ISIS positions once ISIS is defeated. Was that just an opinion he was expressing or a formal policy that you intend to enforce?
Well, I think we've spoken about this before. The Peshmerga themselves have said that, and we would hold them to their word.
Well, there are kind of changing circumstances in that a lot has happened, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of animosity. In fact, you know, the CIA director, John Brennan, has expressed skepticism that Iraq can ever be put back together again. And I'm wondering, you know, if you still remain firmly committed to that, or there's room for negotiations between
No, we
Baghdad?
remain firmly committed to that.
Do you think that will continue in the new administration?
Again, I would refer you to the President-elect's team to discuss any of his policies for the next administration.
Can I go to the Palestinian Israeli
Sure.
issue? Very quickly, I have a quick question. We discussed this a couple of weeks ago. I think Matt raised it on the, barring BDS supporters and so on from entering Israel. Well, it passed its first reading yesterday and so on. And in fact, they were called by former Israeli Minister of Justice Tzipi Livni. It called it McCarthyism, and we should allow everybody in, and that would actually help the BDS movement. Do you have any comment on all this? I mean, I know you said that you don't interfere, but I wanted to know if you do have a position.
I'd reiterate what I think it was Mark who briefed that day, where we spoke about this. We're aware of the various reactions to the proposed bill to bar pro-BDS activists from entering Israel. We understand. I'd also note that the legislation requires several more steps before becoming law. The United States' strong opposition to boycott and sanctions of the State of Israel is well known. However, as a general principle, we value freedom of expression, even in cases where we do not agree with the views espoused. In terms of where the legislation is and the local reaction in the Israeli community, I'd refer you to Israel.
What should, let's say, Americans of Palestinian descent that are active in these issues, when they go, let's say, and they land at Tel Aviv airport and so on, and they're barred from entering the country or held, what should they do? What should the what do you advise them to do
Well, I
in this
think we've
case?
spoken about this
Right.
before, and we've spoken about our conversations with Israel on treating all Americans equally on that. And while every country has a right to control its borders, we certainly support the freedom of expression, even when we don't agree with the policy.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, on the U.S. Tanks that appeared in
The armored personnel carriers, yeah.
any update on it?
So we actually have been looking into it, so thanks for that, because I did want to update you. We take any allegations of end-use violations seriously, in Lebanon, in Syria, anywhere around the world. Our embassy in Beirut is working with the Lebanese armed forces to investigate the images circulating on social media purporting to show Hezbollah displaying U.S. military equipment in Syria. We'd note that the Lebanese military has publicly stated that the M113s depicted online in the Hezbollah military parade were never part of their equipment roster. We'd also note the vehicles in the photos that you can see circulating on Twitter are extremely common in the region. The M113s are old. They're found in a number of different countries' militaries in the region. Identifying their origin is difficult. It's something that we have not yet assessed exactly at this period of time. However, we continue to work closely with our colleagues within the Pentagon and the intelligence community, and we'll update you either later this week or later as soon as we come to a conclusion.
And
So what countries have
Yeah.
in there? What countries in the region?
So I asked that, and apparently it's a number of countries in the region, and these apparently also, it's things I did not know about M113s, is they can last for decades. They can last upwards, 40, 50 years. So as we continue to take a look at these images that were circulating on social media, we'll drill down. We'll see if we can identify it by the configurations of the tanks, things
Right.
like that.
Well, bravo. I'm glad that they last long. It's another testament to American manufacturing.
Thank you.
Uh,
Buy American.
Exactly. Well, so Hezbollah should buy American? Is
Or
that what you're
not,
saying?
yeah.
Well, wait a second.
Yeah.
You say a number of countries.
Yeah.
Can you name them or at least give?
At this stage, I don't want to get ahead of it because
well, how
we're
many?
still
What's
looking.
the number?
Yeah, I will say several. We're still
3,
looking.
4, 5?
I'm not going to characterize it.
It's not like. Well, then how can you say a number of countries
Yeah.
and then not?
As soon as we have more granularity, more details, but I will say, as I mentioned yesterday, that we're actively looking at this. It is of concern as end use is anywhere around the world, and as soon as I have something more, I'll update you guys.
Israel has some, but I think they're probably unlikely to be Hezbollah's supplier.
Is it conceivable that there are actually old Iranian tanks from the Shah days?
Again, I'm just not
Do
in
you
a position
suspect that? Do you
to.
suspect that they may have been old Iranian tanks that have found their way to Lebanon?
Again, I'm not in a position to sort of judge hypotheticals at that. We're looking into it. As soon as I have an update, you guys will get it.
Did the U.S. deliver such arms to the Iraqi government? lately?
Again, we're taking a look. We'll get back to you as soon as we have more, Michelle. Anything?
Or the other question:
Of
does
course.
the Iraqi government have the same kind of tanks?
These are questions in terms of that sort of capability that as we take a look at the photos that were circulating on social media, we'll be able to narrow it down. I just don't have an answer for you.
Elizabeth, 3 weeks ago, Kirby told us that the ICC has made a valuable contribution to the service of accountability in a number of situations. This was in reference to African countries, a handful of them withdrawing cooperation from the ICC. Now the chief prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, says she's investigating U.S. military and the CIA for potential war crimes in Afghanistan. Will you cooperate with this investigation? Do you find it helpful, valuable contribution to the service of accountability?
So I think you're talking about the preliminary examination report of the Office of the Prosecutor. Obviously we're aware of the report. I'd note the United States is deeply committed to complying with the law of war. We have a robust national system of investigation and accountability that is as good as any country in the world. We do not believe that an ICC examination or investigation with respect to the actions of U.S. personnel in relation to the situation in Afghanistan